becoming acquainted and swallowing fears, and settling down to life in this little cabin with its warm glow of wood stove and kerosene lamp, and let the ghosts fly their asses off. The bhikkhu's home in his woods. He only wants peace. Peace he will get. Though why, after 3 weeks of perfect happy peace and adjustment in these strange woods, my soul so went down the drain when I came back with Dave Wayne and Romana and my girl Billy and her kid, I'll never know. Worth the telling only if I dig deep into everything. Because it was so beautiful at first. Even the circumstance of my sleeping bag suddenly erupting feathers in the middle of the night as I turned over to sleep on, so I curse and have to get up and sew it by lamplight, or in the morning it might be empty of feathers, and as I bend poor mother head over my needle and thread in the cabin by the fresh fire and in the light of the kerosene lamp, here come those damned silent black wings flapping and throwing shadows all over my little home. The bloody bats come into my house, trying to sew a poor patch onto my old crumbly sleeping bag, mostly ruined by my having to sweat out a fever inside of it in a hotel room in Mexico in 1957, right after the gigantic earthquake there. The nylon all rotten almost from all that old sweat. It's still soft. Though so soft, I have to cut out a piece of old shirt flap and patch over the rip. I remember looking up from my middle of the night chore and saying bleakly, "They, yes, have bats in Yenmo Valley." But the fire crackles, the patch gets sewn, the creek gurgles and thumps outside. The creek having so many voices, it's amazing. From the kettle drum basin deep bump bumps to the little gurgly feminine crickles over shallow rocks. Sudden choruses of other singers and voices from the log dam. Dibble-dabble all night long and all day long, the voices of the creek amusing me so much at first. But in the later horror of all that madness night, becoming the babble and rave of evil angels in my head. So not minding the bat or the rip, finally. Ending up, can't sleep because too awake now and it's 3 a.m., so the fire I stoke and I settle down and read the entire Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde novel in the wonderful little hand-sized leather book left there by smart Monsanto, who must have read it with wide eyes on a night like that. Ending the last elegant sentences at dawn. Time to get up and fetch water from the gurgly creek and start breakfast of pancakes and syrup. And saying to myself, so why fret when something goes wrong, like your sleeping bag breaking in the night? Use self-reliance. Screw the bats! I add. Marvelous opening moment, in fact, of the first afternoon. I'm left in the cabin, and I make my first meal, wash my first dishes, nap, and wake up to hear the rapturous ring of silence, or heaven even, within and throughout the gurgle of the creek. When you say, "I'm alone," and the cabin is suddenly home, only because you made one meal and washed your first meal dishes. Then nightfall, the religious vestal lighting of the beautiful kerosene lamp, after careful washing of the mantle in the creek and careful drying with toilet paper, which spoils it by specking it, so you wash it again in the creek, and this time just let the mantle drip dry in the sun. The late afternoon sun that disappears so quickly behind those giant, high, steep canyon walls. Nightfall. The kerosene lamp casts a glow on the cabin. I go out and pick some ferns, like the ferns of the Lankavatara scripture, those hairnet ferns. Look, sirs, a beautiful hairnet. Late afternoon fog pours in over the canyon walls, sweep, cover the sun. It gets cold. Even the flies on the porch are so sad as the fog on the peaks. As daylight retreats, the flies retreat like polite Emily Dickinson flies, and when it's dark, they're all asleep in trees or someplace. At high noon, they're in the cabin with you, but edging further towards the open door sill as the afternoon lengthens. How strangely gracious. There's the hum of the bee drone 2 blocks away. The racket of it you'd think was right over the roof when the bee drone swirls nearer and nearer. Gulp again. You retreat into the cabin and wait. Maybe they got a message to come and see you, all 2,000 of them. But getting used to the bee drone finally, which seems to happen like a big party once a week. And so everything, eventually, marvelous. Even the first frightening night on the beach, in the fog, with my notebook and pencil, sitting there cross-legged in the sand, facing all the Pacific fury, flashing on rocks that rise like gloomy sea shroud towers out of the cove. The Big Bang Cove, with its seas booming inside caves and slapping out. The seas, the cities of seaweed floating up and down. You can even see their dark leer in the phosphorescent sea beach nightlight. That first night I sit there and all I know as I look up is the kitchen light is on the cliff to the right, where somebody's just built a cabin overlooking the horrible Sur. Somebody's up there having a mild and tender supper. That's all I know. The lights from the cabin kitchen up there go out like a little weak lighthouse beacon and ends suspended 1,000 feet over the crashing shore. Who would build a cabin up there? But some bored but hoary old adventurous architect, maybe? Got sick of running for Congress in one of these days in a big Orson Welles tragedy with screaming ghosts. A woman in a white nightgown will go flying down that sheer cliff, but actually in my mind what I really see is the kitchen lights of that mild and tender, maybe even romantic, even supper up there in all that howling fog. And here I am way below in the Vulcan's Forge itself, looking up with sad eyes, blanking my little Camel cigarette on a billion-year-old rock that rises behind my head to a height unbelievable. The little kitchen light on the cliff is only at the end of it. Behind it, the shoulders of the great sea hound cliff go rising up and back and sweeping inland higher and higher till I gasp to think, looks like a reclining dog. A big frickin' shoulders on that son of a bitch. Riseth and sweepeth and scareth men to death. But what is death anyway in all this water and rock? I fix up my sleeping bag on the porch of the cabin, but at 2 a.m. the fog starts dripping all wet, so I have to go indoors with wet sleeping bag and make new arrangements. But who can't sleep like a log in a solitary cabin in the woods? You wake up in the late morning, so refreshed and realizing the universe namelessly. The universe is an angel, but easy enough to say when you've had your escape from the gooky city turn into a success. And it's finally only in the woods you get that nostalgia for cities at last. You dream of long, gray journeys to cities where soft evenings will unfold like Paris, but never seeing how sickening it will be because of the primordial innocence of health and stillness in wilds. So I tell myself, be wise.